It's easy to get lost in the weeds of animal nutrition, and with feed costs considerably higher this year, how do we keep it simple, yet make sure the cow's getting what she needs in a cost-effective manner?
But I caution folks that are out there buying forages to price them on a nutrient basis.
Today we talk with the guy I call for my questions on feeding, Josh Stroh, beef nutritionist for Hubbard Feeds, as we talk about the nutritional aspect of wintering cows, and all I asked of him was to keep it simple. Join us on this episode of the Working Ranch Radio Show. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome again to another edition of the Working Ranch Radio Show. I'm your host, Justin Mills, and we're glad to have you here along with us on Rural Radio, Channel 147, Sirius XM, where you will find us right here every Saturday and Sunday at 12 noon Eastern. And if you miss it there, you can also find us on about every major podcast provider out there. If you just search under Working Ranch Radio Show, you will find us, and you can listen to today's episode, which, by the way, is episode 42, or you can also go back and listen to any previous episodes as well. And you can also share them on your social media or to somebody if you want to pass along an episode that you think had some information that was useful for you. Anyways, before we get into our agenda of things here today, I'll tell you something we've been battling here on the X-Ring Ranch, and it has about eaten me out of house and home for cat food. And you're going to laugh when I tell you this, but that's raccoons and skunks. And now the skunks isn't a real big surprise, but raccoons, you know, where our ranch sits here is pretty wide open, and I usually assimilate raccoons being in areas that have a lot more timber, and we don't have much timber on the place. So I'm kind of surprised at where these are coming from, but hopefully we're getting about a good handle on them. And I don't know about you all, but if you got a secret tip on how to take care of these buggers, you might let me pass it along and let me know. But anyways, I think we're going to get a handle on it. Anyways, again, welcome to our show today. As our guest will be Josh Stroh with Hubbard Feeds, as we are talking beef nutrition for winter. And really, as I said at the opening, it's about when I talked with Josh about this, I just said keep it simple, because we can get so busy and so integrated in nutrition, and that's what nutritionists are for. They're to help you with that. But as we are trying to make just off-the-cuff decisions out here on the ranch, what are some things that we can utilize that without having to call a nutritionist, that we can just kind of use to make some decisions out here? That's kind of where that's coming from. So join us today. That'll be coming up in our next segment. Also, the Captain Tim O'Byrne will be by with his edition of Tim's 2 Cents. And then in the last segment today, meteorologist Don Day joining us as the first major winter storm set to hit the country next week. We're going to be talking about that as we get a brief from meteorologist Don Day on our long-term weather. Right now, thank you to our sponsors of the Working Ranch Radio Show, the American Simmental Association. And, you know, through the years, the American Simmental cattle have gained a reputation as the science breed. The American Simmental Association's Carcass Merit Program, feed conversion data, calving ease, research established Simmental as a beef industry leader, combining growth and carcass value with some outstanding cow traits. Research that's been backed by very extensive documented genetics and one of the largest multi-breed databases in the industry. SimGenetics is profit through science. Find out more at simmental.org. Other sponsors include Biozyme, Protect and Recovery with VitaCharge by Biozyme. For more information, visit vitafirm.com/Vita-Charge. Performance Beef. Find Performance Beef online to learn more and request a demo. And finally, Hargrove Ranch Insurance, providing pasture, range, and forage insurance to ranchers across the nation. Give them a call. Hargrove Ranch Insurance at 325-573-8975 and ask for a free custom quote. Also, check them out online at hargroveinsurance.com. Well, now let's check in with the Captain, Tim O'Byrne, publisher and editor of Working Ranch Magazine, for this week's edition of Tim's 2 Cents.
Hey, Justin. Hey, folks out there in Working Ranch Radio Land. If you haven't already made plans to come and join us here in Las Vegas, Nevada, December 8th to 10th for our very, very first Working Ranch Expo, you better get on the computer and get those flights booked or whatever. Get somebody hooked up to chore up for you so you can come down and join us. Justin, I'm really excited about this. Las Vegas is opening back up again. It's just a great feeling. We're going to have international travel here in another week or two again after 2 years. And the town is alive, and we are ready to have a great time during NFR. We got a great speaker lineup. Now, don't forget, Justin, me and you are going to host we're going to be up on stage here. And I kind of promised that I was going to get a glitzy kind of a sparkly tux to go with our Las Vegas flavor. And I kind of thought maybe you would too, but who knows? We'll see what happens. See what you cough up when you show up on stage here. We got a great lineup. Dr. Arn Anderson, Tommy Perkins. We're going to have a kind of a coffee shop to lead it off. Dallas Mount from Ranch Management Consultants is going to be talking about the 5 causes of farm and ranch failures and how to avoid them all. And we've got, oh my gosh, we got so many good Water in the West with speaker Albert Barker, Rajolt and Simpson, LLP. And he's been up to his armpits in the legal fight against water rights and all that kind of stuff for a long, long time now. We're going to have Don Day, your very own weatherman here. Don Day is going to be with us. And we're going to have, let's see, one of the coolest ones is going to be on Friday, December 10th. Seal the Deal. One special ops veteran's journey from the chaos of combat to the serenity of the saddle. That's going to be Greg Putnam, president and co-founder of Little Belt Cattle Company in Montana. And he was also an active duty Navy SEAL. And so he's going to talk about the parallels between ranching and working a bunch of cows and out on a mission. I think there's going to be a lot more speakers here to come. And one of my favorites, I think, is going to be on Thursday, 8 a.m. It's kind of a pre-show one, and it's ranching and relationships. Understanding the 5 love languages can help your family thrive. And our speaker here is Monica Kramer. She's a rural mental health counselor in the Detroit Lakes, Minnesota area. And I just think that we have so much to offer to get these really excellent conversations going, get us thinking, coming away from these seminars, knowing that we're all kind of, dealing with the same problems or variations of them, and we all are interested in helping each other out. Justin, can't wait to see everybody at the Working Ranch Expo December 8th to 10th, right here in Las Vegas, Nevada, right in the middle of it all, Convention Center. See you there.
You bet, and thanks, Captain. And man, what a lineup of speakers, no question about that. Now, the other thing I do want to reference here, though, is my attire and what you think I'm going to be dressed in. And I don't know about the sparkle thing. Now, if you want to go that route, I'll tell you what, I will be there to help you and introduce you on stage as the sparkling captain, but I don't know about me. Anyway, well, stay with us. Beef nutritionist Josh Stroh is up next for our featured interview on winter nutrition, keeping it simple. Then later, meteorologist Don Day with a look at our long-term weather. Don't go away. You're listening to the Working Ranch Radio Show. It's a competitive calf market, and buyers want calves that will perform, period. And a proven solution is Simmental. In fact, data from the Tri-County Steer Carcass Futurity from 2002 through 2018 on nearly 60,000 head of calves revealed that Simmental sired calves represented the highest carcass-valued sire group over English and other continental breed groups. And the sire group that was the second highest carcass value was Sim Angus sire. So, the proof's right there. For low-risk, high-potential calves with earning potential, be confident that Sim Genetics will give you more per head, period. Stand strong, Simmental. Welcome back to the Working Ranch Radio Show. I'm your host, Justin Mills. Our featured interview today is brought to you by Biozyme. Protect and recovery with VitaCharge by Biozyme. For more information, visit vitafirm.com/Vita-Charge. Well, joining us on our program today is Josh Stroh. He's a beef nutritionist for Hubbard Feeds. And Josh, thanks for joining us here on the Working Ranch Radio Show.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me, Justin.
Well, Josh, basically where this evolved from for me and getting a hold of you, as you and I talked, was you and me talking about my operation and looking at things, just the scenario of what's out there. A lot of the country has seen a drought situation. We do know that down in the southeast part of the country, they've seen a lot more moisture down there, but for a good portion of the country, there's been a drought situation, and so we've got high hay prices. We've got maybe a little bit more cattle moving across the marketplace. And so one of the things I know for me was, in light of this particular situation, is I just realized from a nutritionalist standpoint that I know as ranchers we have some basics out there, but I really want to try to simplify this as much as we can and look at some general concepts that as we're starting down this road, and a lot of us have put our feed plans together and starting to get going with how many cattle we're going to winter and laying all of that out there, but some basic concepts that you would recommend that we as ranchers just can look at, knowing that at some point we may need to sit down with a nutritionalist, but just to get started, what are some basic and general concepts that you would suggest ranchers be considering in light of the year's situation?
Sure, that's a great question. And I think the big thing for me is advice I would give is don't miss the forest for the trees. Don't overcomplicate things. I know you mentioned the word simplicity. Mm-hmm. I've been telling folks for months now, as we've kind of built steam into this drought, to have a plan in place. And it's not a one-size-fits-all. And no one has to have the same plan, but I think it is important to kind of have a roadmap in place. If I was to back up a little bit, I would get the people on your team on board. Have the professionals in your corner to help you be consulted and give you advice on just some certain avenues a person can take. Those people on your team are going to be your extension agent, your banker, of course. The veterinarian certainly needs to be on that list as well. People in the nutrition world can sure help on that aspect. Even maybe guys to help you manage some risk. Just the people in your life that can help should be, or hopefully are professionals in their field that can help you determine what plan to plow forward with, or once you determine what you want to do and what your plan is, and what goals you've set to help you kind of achieve those or work through those. I do think it's going to be important to probably make that twofold. Like, you've got some short-term things that need taken care of right away, and then possibly some longer-term planning as well. So I think that's what I would start the conversation with is just have some short-term goals or some short-term planning kind of set up, and on possibly what we're going to do, what you're going to do this fall and winter, and how many cows you're going to run, etc. And then maybe have some longer-term decisions that you've kind of looked at as well. Mm-hmm. So.
Mm-hmm. And that kind of coincides with a little bit of our podcast last week. I had Dallas Mount on with us and with Ranch Management Consultants, and talking about some different tools that would be useful. And one of the things that he talked about was an easel and a flip chart and markers, and basically is getting down to kind of planning and putting things out on paper. When we get to the nutritionist side, and I'm going to pick your brain just a little bit here from a nutritionalist side, because I know for myself, a lot of times there's a lot of information out there when we look at putting stuff together for our plans for the winter months, and whether we're feeding out some heifer calves or whether we're going to feed out our cows. I know the grass that's standing is going to be pretty minimal this year, so there's probably going to be a little bit more winter hay fed than on a normal basis. And so when we start putting that together and start planning out, making sure that we're getting these animals the right amount of requirements, it can get really complicated, but I also want to see, is there some simple things that we could be looking at as ranchers to start down that road of looking at the nutritional elements from just a regular range cow, just some real basic things to look at first. And then, of course, if we need to go into further details with a nutritionist like yourself, we could do that. But what are some simple things first?
So the first thing that I would always encourage someone to do, especially if you're looking at just feed resources in general, and this would be every year, whether you're faced with drought challenges or not, is you want to make sure you've got things tested, either purchased forages or whether home raised. That's a cheap way to really see what you've got. It's hard to know what you've got if you've never checked it out, of course. So, as far as having somebody in your corner to help you do that, a lot of times your extension agent or again, your feed sales reps, those kind of guys, they do a lot of that. Go out, take some core samples of your hay or maybe even some dormant forage if you got it out there. We kind of have some benchmarks out there as well. So, I mean, if someone calls and says we're going to be on dormant winter range, it's not going to be that variable, but it's still pretty cheap way, especially on the stockpiled feed, to have somebody come out, core sample them, and send it into a lab. And what that will give you is just the information, and that's powerful when you're trying to figure out feeding, whatever you're feeding, it could be your bulls to you name it. Mm-hmm. And the things that are going to be important for just your general rancher, just to keep it simple, is to look at the first and foremost, the protein, the energy values, and dry matter on dry forages won't be that variable, but if we get into some silages or some haylages or that kind of thing, that can really kind of fluctuate. So it's nice to know what those values are as well. But I don't get caught in the weeds looking at it's, unless you're really wanting to be technical or shoot for targeted gains or something like that. But those ones I listed, just crude protein and TDN, that would be about as simple as it gets, and can kind of give you a roadmap for what that feed's got in it. The caveat with that this year is because the area is so stressed from a drought scenario, it's going to be wildly variable what hay and particularly hay is going to test. Mm-hmm. Even stuff that you maybe historically, we don't need to test that ever because we've tested it in the past and multiple times. It's never different. This is a year to test. And maybe it won't be variable, but for $25-$30, you sure have some insurance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The other thing I might mention, while we're on feed tests, is there'll be a lot of like failed grain crops that were harvested for hay. Or just even like the cereal grains for forage anyway, be paying attention to nitrate levels. That would be something else I would put on a test if you were to send in, particularly like, barley hay, wheat hay, triticale. And even if you're going to feed some straw, I know there'll be some folks reaching out, trying to procure straw and feed that somewhat this winter as well, to kind of an idea on nitrates on it is at the same time you're looking at nutrient density. The other part of that is that I would keep it simple is maybe this is overcomplicating it but I caution folks that are out there buying forages to price them on a nutrient basis. And so you need to figure out like how much protein you're buying in that ton of feed, because that can be wildly variable as well. To give you an example, I'll throw this out there because I'm seeing hay trade for more money than $250 a ton. But say we use $250 a ton, if you're buying hay that is 15% crude protein, that is going to be a lot more economic value on if you're buying the protein than say $100 straw that's tested 4% protein.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's take a break here. When we come back, we're going to continue in this conversation with Josh Stroh, beef nutritionist, and talk about these calculations and how we can get that done when we come back on the Working Ranch Radio Show here on Rural Radio, Channel 147, Sirius XM. It's weaning time, one of the biggest days of the year for you and the most stressful for your calves. Ensure a smooth transition with a VitaCharge weaning program. This two-step program with the AmaFirm Advantage gives calves the nutritional boost they need to get through the first weeks of weaning, accelerate appetite, increase weight gain, and improve health. It's weaning time. Get them ready with VitaCharge. For more information, visit vitafirm.com/Vita-Charge. Welcome back to the Working Ranch Radio Show. I'm your host, Justin Mills, and through the break, I got to thinking here just a little bit for the fact that, my title of this show is about keeping it simple, and I know that what we've talked about and what we're going to talk more about with our guest today, Josh Stroh, who's a beef nutritionist, is maybe not going to sound completely simplified, but in a way, I really feel it is to a point, and that is that there's going to be some information that's probably would be good to go back and listen to again. And it's not because we're not trying to cover a lot of stuff. We're just trying to get through a few things here. And so I think it's a good at this point to point out the fact that you can go back and listen to the Working Ranch Radio Show through about every podcast provider. And again, today is episode 42. So with that, let's continue. And before the break, our guest today, Josh Stroh, beef nutritionist for Hubbard Feeds, was talking about making sure that when we are purchasing feed that we are looking at those nutritional requirements or nutritional values in that feed and pricing that feed based upon that. And so, Josh, I wanted you to expand, if you could, just a little bit more on that.
Sure. So, of course, we live in the age of Google. Just ask Siri. But if you're math savvy, it's really not too terribly hard. But you would just calculate, usually on a nutrient test, they'll tell you, say we'll take crude protein for an example. It'll give you the percent protein, crude protein on a dry matter basis, or it'll do it as fed. A lot of times both calculations will be on that printout or the report you get back. And so you would just take that by what you're feeding, so you're buying it by the ton, say, so it's $100 a ton and it's so many percent crude protein, how many pounds of protein are coming in that ton of feed, and you know what you're paying for it. So that's probably the simplest way to explain that. But in a lot of times, if you already have the forage or you already purchased it, it's still wise to test it, because then you can have someone direct you on how best to supplement that as well, or what to mix it with, or that kind of thing. So
For me, I'm kind of a minimalist. I guess our operation allows for that a little bit, because I try to not have to get, hopefully have enough standing winter grass that we don't have to feed hay. And I know that's a goal of a lot of folks out there. We don't calve until May, so we're later calvers. That's not always what everybody does. So I'm not going to say my operation's the same as everybody else out there, but I am from a minimalist, I guess, perspective in everything. And so what are some things that we're overdoing in our feeding here with our cattle that I guess is creating, I'm going to say, maybe some waste and some money that we're not utilizing the best way? And so that may be a tough question, because I know you work for a company that sells supplements, but at the same time, I kind of throw it back, say, where do you see waste taking place?
Well, to kind of go back to how we started, just keeping things simple, God made cattle to do something that, that's why I like beef cows. They can take a low quality fiber source and turn it into a high quality product. So just always remember that they have a big fermentation vat inside of them, that a microbial population turns that product into food for them. And so always be thinking on the cow, especially if you're talking range cows, and that's kind of where we're targeting. But you're feeding the microbial population in the rumen. And so think of what tools do I need to give those quote unquote bugs to do what they need to do. And so like, to get back to just this minimalist or very conservative feeding, it's not, there's some guys that will have some dormant forage out there and can just match that with the right protein level. Mm-hmm. I think that's one thing I would you caution everybody with possibly a lot of low quality forage being purchased and or utilized is just making sure the protein's out there, and that can be in many forms. But kind of a rule of thumb, and I've been getting this question a lot, is how much straw can we feed? And we're going to feed, or maybe a comment, we're only going to get straw. And you will probably, I mean, depending on weather and the size of the cow and whatnot, you would lose a body condition a month if you don't have compaction issues and et cetera. So some things to think about there too, fall time right now. If you haven't weaned your calves and you're short on forage, the quickest way for you to save some forage is to wean the calves. So that would be, back to that short-term plan. Mm-hmm. We're kind of getting to the normal time of year now. And I know, some of these guys, if you got plenty of fall grass, it's maybe not as big an issue, but if you need to save grass, you get the calf off the cow and she will be about 2/3. You'll save a full 1/3 of what she used to have to utilize. Aside from what the calf's eating out there,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you drop her requirements by a lot. And so then getting back to your question, if you've got a dry cow on some dormant forage, it doesn't take a lot of quality and fiber. And as long as you've kind of got her protein needs met, and she can go out there and find the fiber to put with it. Mm-hmm. But yeah. I know in some of my areas, we get a lot of guys that are like you, that just normally would have some winter forage to go on to that have none.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, let's take a break here, and when we come back, we'll continue our conversation with beef nutritionist Josh Stroh as we talk about what is the one or two single most important things he feels are important to an animal's nutritional diet when we continue on the Working Ranch Radio Show on Rural Radio, Channel 147, Sirius XM. Animal health is key to your business. So how do you track cattle health treatments? Well, stop relying on pen and paper or complicated programs. Performance Beef helps you record processing data, enter costs, and track animal health history all in real time at the chute. The mobile app also makes it easy to log pasture and pen treatments on the go. Your health data is integrated with feed and financial information in one easy-to-use platform, accessible from your computer, smartphone, or tablet. Find Performance Beef online to request a demo. Welcome back to the Working Ranch Radio Show. I'm your host, Justin Mills. Thanks for joining us here today. My guest is Josh Stroh, beef nutritionist, as we are talking about simplifying our winter nutrition program for our cattle. And by the way, if you want to go back and listen to this program through every major podcast provider out there, you can do that. Today is episode 42. But Josh, I want to get into now. We've talked about some of the waste that we're seeing in the nutritional elements of our of feeding. I also want to go now and go the other way, and let's look at some things that maybe we don't see as being as valued as it could be, and what you think is the most or one or two most important things when it comes to animal nutrition.
So if I could only do one thing, it's going to be a vitamin mineral pack, and that's probably from obviously my background and what I do, but I think that that's probably the most important thing in my opinion. But then also too, I always relate it to the guy stepping over a 20 to pick up a 1. Sometimes that preventative maintenance goes a long, long ways to actually putting money in your pocket. When we're talking about fetal health and just running metabolism and all the inner workings in the biological systems of the cow, especially if she's pregnant and possibly she's still milking, I wouldn't shortchange mineral.
Sure.
And some people will argue that, but they'll argue it till they have a train wreck.
Yeah.
Right. So it's kind of like, and the other thing that's tough that I've always said, and my mentor, I think you know Butch Whitman.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
One thing he would always say is in beef cattle, we don't have enough measurement points. So, we know our calving rate or our preg rate and our weaning weights, but there's this quiet background of things minerals doing for you that you get a lot of benefit that you maybe don't see.
Mm-hmm.
If you get your cow to live an extra year or just more immune response, better quality colostrum, some fetal programming things, all those are fairly quiet that make you big money in the big picture. So I would think that's a real fundamental thing that's probably no surprise to anybody that a nutritionist would say mineral.
Well, yeah, but at the same time, I've heard non-nutritionalists that are not working for, say the same thing, that a mineral vitamin package is huge to your cow.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree. It's something that we can just like throw out of our mind saying, well, they're living, they got a calf on their side. They're fine.
Sure. Well, and it kind of goes back to the thing too, where I get this once in a while. Someone will say, "Well, I don't need to do that. Look at the elk and the deer,"
mm-hmm.
or "My grandpa didn't have to. My grandpa just put out white salt blocks or whatever." Your grandpa also didn't have a cow that like in my system in Eastern or Central Montana, we have a lot of March babies that can wean wean off at 700 pounds in October on no creep.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Grandpa never did that.
Mm-hmm.
And that system takes some input.
It does.
And it might just be, on some level. And that isn't for everybody either.
Mm-hmm.
We can go back to, a smaller cow, and does that make you more money? And we can have that discussion. But just even take, for example, if we look in like the 1950s for data, there's no such thing as calf feds.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We maybe didn't even breed females till they were, until they were 2, and so we're forcing some biological things that we have to give the tools to, and I think the main tools of that is mineral.
Mm-hmm.
I like back to the deer and elk thing. I mean, who wants to have maybe in a healthy elk population a 40% calf crop? I mean, who wants that?
Yeah, that's a good point.
No one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's true. That's for sure.
And a person can put some environmental pressures and have a more frugal outlook on it and force their cows put some environmental pressure, and I'm all for that in the right scenario too. But you're still asking your heifers to get bred when they're 1, and you're still wanting them to have be bred again by their 2nd birthday. And so hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I want to go back to some simple things, and I should have brought this up when we were talking originally, but some targets that we should look at in terms of these for our diets on these animals. On a cow to get through the winter, what are some target numbers in terms of protein and other things that we need to be looking at in this feed? And I know that could range between 1st to 3rd trimester and when she calves and so forth like that. I know there's a lot of variation there, but let's just kind of go through some of those targets on the cow.
Sure. So if we use, say, a 1,300-pound cow, I know that's going to hit your audience. I mean, we've got some in the 12s, but I think kind of gone are the 1,100 pounders. There's still some out there, but if we just talk 1,300 pound mature weight cows, we're getting into, say like 7, 8, 9 months past when they calved. If they're still milking, of course, it's going to take more.
Mm-hmm.
But if we say we're in 2nd trimester and a weaned calf, that cow can get by with 1.5 pounds of protein a day.
Okay.
That's going to be kind of a good number to think of, and it's going to build steam as we get into to calving. So we need to be 3rd trimester a couple pounds of protein.
Okay.
And energy would be like if you could be, if we're talking the same metrics as far as the type of the animal and months since calving, you would be off the top of my head 11 pounds of energy.
Okay.
for the same thing. And as we work into calving, third trimester, we better be 13, pushing 15 by the time, 14 and a half, 15 by the time we calve. Once they start lactating, that's when obviously she's going to take a lot more nutrient density, more nutrient needs. So, for example, kind of using the same cow, because that's the one I got in my head.
Yeah.
Like say if she's a 20-pound peak milk type of cow, protein will be peak lactation 2 months after calving. She'd need 3 pounds of protein. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of just to maintain body condition score. Mm-hmm. So that's something to think about too. If we need to advance the cows or anything like that, or gain some flesh, now is the time to do it, because it obviously becomes a lot harder third trimester, and then it's impossible. And it can be very, very difficult in lactation. I know, like someone like you that's calving a little later, you're getting to calve on the nutrient dense part of the growing season. So that definitely that's definitely a help there. But some of our February calvers that are out there where peak lactation is happening in April and things haven't really popped yet, they're having to feed that energy. So protein, 3 pounds peak lactation, and then as far as energy, you'd be like 17 pounds. So that kind of gives you an idea. As far as the diet goes, second trimester, they would need, we could be clear down on I don't like to formulate diets probably under 9% protein, but I know you could get away with a little less in second trimester, especially if you've got plenty of body condition already. So yeah, TDN, more like high 40s.
Mm-hmm. Well, now's a good time to take another break, and when we come back, we're going to continue with this conversation. Josh Stroh, beef nutritionist, is my guest today. We've talked about some of the benchmarks or targets for cow nutrition. Now let's talk about if we're going to winter a heifer calf back and what that would look like. We're going to talk about it when we come back on the Working Ranch Radio Show. Coming to the Las Vegas Convention Center, December 8th, 9th, and 10th, it's the Working Ranch Expo, brought to you by Working Ranch Magazine. It's thousands of feet of space filled with the ranch industry's leading equipment manufacturers and suppliers, plus great speakers that will inspire and educate you. And we're in the hall just across from Cowboy Christmas. Register to attend at WorkingRanchExpo.com. It's Working Ranch Expo by day, NFR by night. We'll see you at the Expo. Welcome back to the Working Ranch Radio Show. I'm your host, Justin Mills. Thanks for joining us here again today. This is episode 42, by the way, and we're glad to have you here along. Josh Stroh, beef nutritionist, is my guest today. Before the break, we were talking about some of the benchmarks or things, targets that we could be looking at for cow nutrition. Now let's talk about heifer nutrition, or keeping that heifer calf back. And I know for some folks, you're probably scratching your head thinking, why in the world would you be keeping a heifer calf back this year with the price of hay? And Josh, I know that was something that you and I have been talking through with my operation here. And it's maybe not going to work for everyone depending on the price of your hay, but these heifers are so discounted back that it might be economical for some folks to keep heifers back, whether it's replacements back or whether it's just some heifers that they're going to put to grass next year. Nevertheless, let's take a quick look at some of these target marks for getting these heifers through the winter. Okay, so I'll backtrack a little bit on those. So again, depending on the type of system you want to do and whatnot, some couple good targets to think about. Historically, the data and most nutritionists are going to tell you you want the female to be about 63 to 65% of her mature body weight when you breed her the first time. I think there's some data out there, and I don't want to be misleading to your audience. That's still what I would recommend, because I know we would prevent train wrecks that way. Yeah. But you can definitely do less. And some data like out of University of Nebraska really pushing the envelope on that and still getting a lot of females bred. Maybe a less percentage of them, but so be thinking of that as kind of an idea of what that. So if you're weighing them now and then you're going to breed, say, June 1, what do they need to kind of weigh? And that'll give you a roadmap of how many pounds a day you want them to gain. But most of those diets for those replacement heifers are going to be
pound and a half. That's kind of a good, real good average of what you want them or need them to gain, pound and a half. And that's really not that hard to do. Most your regular type grass alfalfa mix hays are going to have plenty enough to do that 1.2 to 1.5, depending on their energy value.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times you can put maybe a little protein with that, a little, if cake's your thing, or maybe some tubs or whatnot, just to make sure. But as far as nutrient density and kind of same things we talked about with the animals, again, it kind of depends on their mature weight or what they will be potentially and where they'll finish at and whatnot. If I'm really having to target 1.5 pounds a day, I like to use an energy measurement called NEG, and that would stand for net energy for gain. So net energy for gain, a lot of those diets will be 36 megacals per 100 to possibly 40, depending on where you need your gain to be. But so that would be net energy for gain. And most of the standard nutrient tests will give you that value as well. So
okay.
And then as far as protein, you're going to want a little more protein than the cows. We can kind of be double digits for the diet. That would be great. 12 is a good rule of thumb on the percent of the diet. As far as the amount of crude protein, like 1.5 pounds, 1 1/3 pounds, kind of depending on their weight and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But 1.5 pounds of protein and 36 megacal NEG, and you'll be in the hunt. And that might be too green for some guys, so I would caution you, if you're worried about that. There's a lot going on in that replacement heifer world where I feel like we've really pushed them hard, and there's two main things that drive onset of puberty, and that's weight and age. And so we can get more heifer cycling, but I do think in some of this big range country, we get them a little fleshy maybe. Mm-hmm. And then when we do turn them out or they hit grass,
they go backwards.
They go backwards. Mm-hmm. And you don't want that. No, yeah. You'd rather just, in my opinion, keep them on the gain, but you don't want to have that couple weeks where they're losing a lot of flesh and weight. Mm-hmm. And there's some behavioral things that happen with that too. They gotta, they're gonna pace the fence. They gotta figure out their pecking order, and it's just hard to get pregnancies to stick when they're doing that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Josh, we've talked a lot of different things today here about animal nutrition. Is there anything that we left out that maybe you wanted to touch on just a bit?
One thing we didn't really touch on is water quality and quantity. That's been a big deal going into this through the drought, and will continue. And I know a lot of the West sees high iron, high sulfates, high nitrates, high total dissolved solids. And so that might be something to focus on is evaporation makes these reservoirs low, and the water quality can kill your performance or even have some toxic effects. And so pay attention to that.
All right. Well, Josh, I do appreciate you joining us here on the Working Ranch Radio Show.
Sure. I appreciate you having me.
Josh Stroh, beef nutritionist for Hubbard Feeds, has been my guest today as we talk on this topic of winter nutrition for our cattle. And again, my title was to keep it simple. And I know we covered a lot of information today, and I hope you have that opportunity to go back and listen to it. And I guess when I say keeping it simple is because we are not nutritionists as ranchers. That's not what we do on a full-time basis. But at the same time, we need to have a good understanding of some of these elements and the basic elements. And that is exactly what I tried to bring out here today. And I know it's in a lot of our minds right now because we are heading into that time of the year where we are getting our plans pulled together and finalized for our winter feeding plans. But anyways, with that, I want to thank Josh Stroh for joining us here today, being our guest to talk on this subject. Our featured interview today has been brought to you by Biozyme Protect and Recovery with Vita Charge by Biozyme. For more information, visit vitafirm.com/Vita-Charge. Coming up next, meteorologist Don Day joins us as the first major winter storm is set to hit the country. Next week, we're going to talk about it when we come back on the Working Ranch Radio Show. Ranching has been in the Hargrove family for generations, and they know the value of keeping a ranch in the family. Hargrove Ranch Insurance provides pasture, range, and forage insurance to ranchers across the nation. PRF Insurance is a USDA subsidized program that allows ranchers to insure against the risk of below average rainfall. Hargrove Ranch Insurance utilizes industry-leading custom software to provide the rancher with information they need to stay up to date and educated on their policy throughout the year. Hargrove Ranch Insurance supports ranchers for this generation, the next, and those yet to come. Contact Hargrove Ranch Insurance at 325-573-8975 for a free custom quote or online at hargroveinsurance.com. Welcome back to the Working Ranch Radio Show. I'm your host, Justin Mills, as we turn now towards our weather segment today, brought to you by Hargrove Ranch Insurance, providing pasture, range, and forage insurance to ranchers across the nation. Give them a call for a free custom quote at 325-573-8975 or check them out online at hargroveinsurance.com. Well, joining us now is meteorologist Don Day with a look at our long-term weather. And Don, it appears as though we are going to see our first major winter storm hit the country next week. And I know when I looked at the map, it looked like it was going to be a pretty good change in weather starting from the Missouri River all the way to the West Coast. So give us kind of the lowdown of what we're going to be seeing for this first major winter storm.
Yeah, what we have is the first real, what I would say, the real first bona fide chance for widespread freezing temperatures and the first low elevation snowfalls of the season, and they could be significant. So far, the fall season has been relatively tame in terms of no really big early fall storms yet. We've had a couple of cold shots into the United States, but there's a lot of areas of the U.S. that haven't had the first hard frost or freeze. But that's all going to come to a crashing end as we see cold air going to get released from the North Slope of Alaska, the Northwest Territories, and slide into British Columbia. At the same time, that's going to happen. There's a really warm, moist air mass that's going to get drawn into the central areas of the United States. And the contrast between that cold and the warmer and the moist conditions will help a very strong storm system to develop along the lee of the Rockies, probably in the Tuesday, Wednesday timeframe of next week. And this is going to have everything but the kitchen sink in it. We're likely going to have rain and thunderstorms. And then as the storm intensifies, a lot of wind. And we'll see some snows in the central and northern Rockies. And this system is showing signs of being having the potential to be a very strong early October storm.
Mm-hmm. Do you have it pinpointed as to where the severity might be the most?
Well, I would say the central Rockies. I would say that the bullseye of this storm, as it looks right now, would probably be from northwest, north central Colorado through all of Wyoming into south central Montana, then the western Dakotas, maybe into the Nebraska Panhandle as well. Those areas will experience everything. That'll run the gamut from rain to thunder to wind and then possibly some snow. This does remind us a little bit of the October 2013 storm that hit a very similar geographic area. And it was quite a strong storm and a really hard one for livestock producers in the Western High Plains and Rockies. And it's a pattern that is showing some similarities to what we saw in 2013. So heads up to everybody. It's been a pretty warm September, pretty warm early October, but this will be an impactful storm. Now, the silver lining there will be some really good amounts of moisture that will be hitting the very dry areas. It's one of those double-edged swords, however.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Beyond this storm, do we see anything coming down for the latter part of October into November?
Yeah, I think as we go right at the end of the month, around or just after Halloween into early November, will be the next outbreak of colder and stormy weather. Certainly what we do see for the rest of October is the northern jet stream kind of taken over. And that means a much more autumn-like pattern for a lot of the United States, but especially the central and the west. With a storm this large, it usually takes another week or two for the atmosphere to sort of recharge itself. And that would put us right at the end of the month.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So we've talked about the West. What are they going to see down in the southeast part of the country?
Well, they've been getting, they have been wet all year. That's the wettest part of the North America has been the southeast and south central areas of the United States. Now they're going to escape the cold. They're going to have a little bit of a warmer than average next week and a half or so. Yeah, there'll be some shower and thunderstorm activity, but overall, that's going to be one of the better places to be in the United States as opposed to the central and western areas.
All right. Well, thanks for giving us a little bit of a heads up here. And like you said, we want the moisture. Does it have to be in the snow form and wind? Can we just have the moisture without the snow and the wind?
That's the second most requested thing I get as a weather forecaster. The first one is, can it rain only at night? Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, thanks for joining us here again on the Working Ranch Radio Show. Thanks for having me.
Meteorologist Don Day with a look at our long-term weather. By the way, if you want to catch his daily video podcast, and with this winter storm coming in, it would be a good time to kind of keep your ears and eyes peeled about what is going on and what he thinks, how things are going to play out with this first winter storm. Check him out online at dayweather.com. Again, that's dayweather.com for his daily video podcast that kicks out every Monday through Friday. Our weather segment today has been brought to you by Hargrove Ranch Insurance, providing pasture, range, and forage insurance to ranchers across the nation. Give them a call. Hargrove Ranch Insurance at 325-573-8975 for a free custom quote, or check them out online at hargroveinsurance.com. Other sponsors of the Working Ranch Radio Show include the American Simmental Association, SimGenetics, Heterosis Works, which is why with Simmental, it's more per head, period. Find out more at simmental.org. Biozyme, protect and recovery with Vita Charge by Biozyme. For more information, visit vitafirm.com/Vita-Charge. And Performance Beef. Find Performance Beef online to learn more and request a demo. Well, if you'd like to get a hold of me, you can sure do it by calling or texting the studio. The phone number here is 307-363-COWS, or you can also send me an email. I'm good about responding to that as well at justin.workingranch@gmail.com. We had really good responses out of last week's show. In fact, one of the good listeners sent me an email. I had mentioned something about having a dog was something that very useful on a ranch for efficiency. And he said, hey, could we do a show on dogs? So that's something we'll have to look into to see if we can come up with something on that. Speaking of what's coming up on the Working Ranch Radio Show, be sure to join us next week as Dr. Kim Stackhouse Lawson with Colorado State University will be joining me, and she's just has some great information about us in the ranching, kind of understanding our customers, the consumers at the meat counter, and how the generational mindsets are coming into some of that. And a good show there with Dr. Kim Stackhouse Lawson with Colorado State next week. Be sure to join us for that. And speaking of Colorado State University, I want to remind folks across the country too that coming up November 16th and 17th in Rapid City, South Dakota, it's the Range Beef Cow Symposium, and it's a joint effort between Colorado State University, University of Wyoming Extension, South Dakota State University Extension, and the Nebraska Extension. And it's just a 2-day conference. Several years ago, I went to one of these, and definitely was some of the best speakers, some of the great topics that I'd come away from. Only a 2-day event, so it doesn't take up all week of your time. This is like symposium number 27, I believe, that they're putting on, and it really is a great event. Again, I'm going to be there. Look forward to seeing anybody else there as well. November 16th and 17th in Rapid City, South Dakota. Just search in your web browser under Range Beef Cow Symposium. Well, the Working Ranch Radio Show is a production of Working Ranch Magazine, and we invite you to join us right here every Saturday and Sunday at 12 noon Eastern on Rural Radio, Channel 147, Sirius XM, or on your podcast provider. Thanks again for joining us. I'm your host, Justin Mills, and until next time, keep your chin down and your mind in the middle. So long.